Hello everyone, I'm Mary Frankland and I'm the founder of Dean Farm Trust and Dean Farm Animal Sanctuary, and I'm delighted to be here today to be invited to the virtual Animal Rights March 2020. It's an absolute honour to be invited to speak at this wonderful event. I'm going to talk today about our sanctuary and a little bit of what goes on behind the scenes and our ethos and philosophy and how that fits in with veganism. But first of all, I think a good place to start would be to talk a little bit about myself and how I decided to set up an animal sanctuary. So back in 2004, I was not a vegan, I was a meat eater, and I started to research the where my meat and leather and associated other products came from. And I used to go to the library every day. I didn't have a computer in those days. I used to go to the library with my 2-hour ticket, 2-hour slot, and I started researching and looking at excuse me, where my meat came from. And the more I looked, the more horrified I was with what I saw. I saw intensive factory farming, slaughterhouses, how leather's produced, vivisection, horse racing, just every conceivable way that animals are used and abused. I researched through sites such as Animal Aid and PETA and Viva, and I just felt this is absolutely horrific. I could not believe, excuse me, I could not believe what I was seeing, and I felt I had to do something. So I felt that if it affected me so much, if other people knew where their meat came from, they too would feel like I did. And I virtually went vegan overnight. So I thought I need to do something. I need to show people what's actually happening and to try and help animals and how to promote veganism. So I visited a number of animal sanctuaries, and I felt I wanted to open up an animal sanctuary. I wanted to rescue animals. I wanted people to come in to the sanctuary to learn about the animals and also help them to identify that these animals are no different to your cats and dogs and no different to humans the way they feel, and really we should not be treating them in this way. However, I had absolutely no money and hadn't set up a sanctuary before. And on my research on visiting sanctuaries, they all said to me, Mary, don't do this because funding is a massive, massive problem. And so many people set up sanctuaries, and unfortunately, because they don't get enough funding, a lot of them then end up closing down, and the bigger sanctuaries have to take the animals. So I felt that funding was probably one of the biggest issues, and I really didn't want to end up like that, obviously. And I wanted it to be successful, so I thought I need to sort the funding out, and I came up with this brainwave idea of setting up a company that would then fund the initial start of the sanctuary. So I set up a company in 2005 called Dean Healthcare, which is a recruitment agency that supplies carers and support workers and nurses to people who have learning disabilities and mental health issues into hospitals and the elderly in care homes and children. And I thought, well, in 2 years we would make enough money. I lived with my partner in the Forest of Dean in a little 1-bedroom cottage, and I thought within 2 years, great, we'll make a fair bit of money and be able to either sell the business or use the profits to set up a sanctuary. Well, it didn't quite work like that, and it was nearly 10 years of hard work, sort of 18 hours a day, 365 days a year from our little cottage in the Forest of Dean. And then in 2012 we found a dilapidated house and 10 acres of land over in Chepstow, and it was at that point that we were able then to start to rescue animals. So that was a fantastic point for us. We'd spent 10 years, and no matter how hard times got for us, no matter how difficult it was we always had the animals in mind, and thought of the suffering that they're going through would never be anywhere near, you know, that suffering would just be incomparable to what we were doing with the company. So that was the start of Dean Farm Trust, a registered charity and limited company. And what I would like to do now is take you over to the sanctuary to talk a little bit about the work that we do there. So as you can see, we're now up at Dean Farm Sanctuary, and following on from our dilapidated house and our few acres of land, we started rescuing animals in 2013. However, it being a residential home, we couldn't have open days and obviously have volunteers and promote veganism and promote compassionate living. And so we, with the first few years, we rescued, Sooty was our first pony, Pudding was our first pony, and we rescued a handful of hens named Fluffy, Lucky Legs, Helmet and Gloria. 3 years later, luckily, some land and some barns became available, and we were lucky enough to secure them and moved up to the sanctuary site in Shire Newton, which is now Dean Farm Sanctuary, and this is where we are now. So we moved with 46 animals, and we now have 180 animals here at Dean Farm Sanctuary. In that time, we've rescued over 350 animals. So, as I said, Dean Healthcare was instrumental in allowing us, or enabling us to secure this area and help set up the infrastructure, the fencing and the housing and the water and electricity. But obviously long term, that's not a long-term strategy or option, and we're now raising funds to manage the sanctuary through public funding and grants. So here we are at Dean Farm Sanctuary, and what do we do? Well, thankfully, all of you wonderful, wonderful vegan supporters have been so good to us over the years that we are now in a situation that we are having open days and events for people to come in to see our residents. As I said earlier, what was important is to promote the veganism and promote compassionate living and bring people into the sanctuary to see our animals and connect and make more compassionate lifestyle choices. What is fundamentally important, and probably one of the most important things, is how we look after our animals at Dean Farm Sanctuary. The rescue, believe it or not, is the easy part. It is then committing to their lifelong care at the sanctuary. So that means giving them enough space, enough enrichment, enough stimulation, giving them the right companions, giving them shelter, giving them warmth, giving them the right nutrition, making sure we've got enough resources and people to clean them out, to give them daily checks. We've got enough funds to pay for vets bills, to pay for farriers, to pay for vaccinations, to pay for external consultants. When I was a child, I couldn't bear any animals in cages, and even from the age of 3 years old, and this is going back into the 60s, I used to go around to friends' houses and let the bunny rabbits out because I couldn't bear to see them in cages. My father was obviously it was a bit of a nightmare really, because he was constantly having to go to the pet shop and buy more rabbits. But for me, I cannot bear to see animals without enough space to live in. And I suppose I think of it as maybe being in prison, or this may be an analogy that you're in prison and then you're set free. And can you imagine the feeling of being in confinement, let alone the torture and the cruelty, the confinement, and then being let free, only to find that you're actually in another type of prison because the space that you're in is too small and isn't cleaned out, and you're lying in your own faeces and your own urine because you're living in that area for maybe 10 or 20 or 30 years. So it is vitally important to us to make sure that all of our animals have absolutely as close to a natural environment as possible, so they can express themselves and they can vocalise. They have 2 or 3 paddocks that they can go into, so we rotate the paddocks and the fields and the housing. hopefully that people see that on our open days and events, and I think this is why, again, it's very important for us to show transparency. All of you wonderful, wonderful vegan supporters have supported us so much, and when you give us money, you need to know where it's going. So we operate a full transparency, I suppose, policy, and this is why we're registered with the Charities Commission. We've got a registered company, so you can see all of our accounts online. We're registered more recently with the fundraising regulator, and so you can see exactly if you're giving money to Hen Heaven Fencing, then that's where the money's going. If you're giving money to Vets Bills, that's where the money's going. And that's very important for us as a charity to ensure that you have 100% faith in us and in what we're doing, and you can see us develop with our projects over the years. So let's go and meet some of our wonderful residents. So as the title of my little speech today is Rescue to Remedy, what I thought would be really, really nice is I talked about where your money goes and what we do here at Dean Farm, and I thought I'd give you a few examples. So who we're starting off with is one of our very first rescue pigs, and this is Billy. And Billy's having an afternoon nap at the moment, as he normally does. So Billy came to my attention, in actual fact, when we rescued Tina and her 5 friends back in, when we rescued Tina in December 16, and then we came across Billy, who was at this organic free-range farm, and the farmer said to me, "Would you like a pig?" And I said, "Well, what are the circumstances?" And he said, "We've got this 2-year-old bull. He's absolutely lovely. He used to be a family pet, and don't worry if you don't want him, because he's going to go off to slaughter. He's blind and he's not actually performing because he had stunted growth and so can't perform for us to breed from." So I went and I said, "Well, can I have a look at Billy? Can I see him?" And I went across this farm, across this dilapidated farmyard. It was freezing cold. As I said, it was just before Christmas. And I looked into this hovel, and I was just absolutely, I couldn't believe what I saw. I saw little Bill here, up to his stomach in feces and urine on ground, which obviously hadn't been cleaned out ever, I wouldn't think. He was spinning around, and the stench was just unbearable. And I just was speechless, completely and utterly speechless. I don't think anything has hit me like that, really. And so I just said to the farmer, I said, yes, we can take Bill, that's fine. I thought, I've just got to get him out, I've got to get him out of here. And Bill had a friend called Wynne, and she had epilepsy and foot problems, and so we basically rescued Wynne with Billy in February 2017. When Billy came back to the sanctuary and we took him off our little he's snoring, our little horse box, he couldn't stand up. His feet were so damaged, and we didn't realise this at the time because obviously they didn't know, they hadn't really checked him, I suppose. But he couldn't stand up because he was in so much absolute agonising pain, where he'd stood for 18 months to 2 years of his life in faeces and urine, and they had just burnt his pads and his little feet. So he was also castrated, so we then went through the long process of having him, the vets came to see him. We gave him massive deep beds of straw, clean bedding. I mean, he was absolutely caked in faeces, bless him. And the vets gave him, castrated him. At that time they had a look at his feet because we didn't know what was wrong with them. And they said they've never seen damage like that before in a pig, and he was only 2 years old. They said it's irreparable, you won't be able to repair it, but we'll do what we can to make him comfortable. So we thought at that time, this would be March time, 2017, if we can just get Bill outside for once. For one summer, Bill can go outside, he can feel the grass under his feet, have a wallow, feel the sunshine. I thought that's and that's what we want to do. And so from the first 2 or 3 months, he stayed inside. He had different treatments on his feet and pain relief medication. he recovered from his castration. And then we went about building a little paddock for Billy. And this is in actual fact Bill's first paddock. As you can see, this was his house we had built for him. And then we have got boards against the wire fences so he doesn't catch his tusks on the wire. So that was in 2017. And there is a video on our website of him when he first came out in May of that year, and it's absolutely beautiful. He's eating the clover and he's walking around and he's having a wallow, and he's in this paddock. This is now 3 years later, and he is still enjoying life at Dean Farm, and that's because of your support, but because he sees the vet once a year. He has complementary therapies. He comes in every winter because in the winter months he roots and roots and roots, and all the mud gets into his pads, his damaged pads, which of course then get infected. So he comes into deep beds of straw in the winter months, and then comes back out again in the spring. Not only that, we thought maybe would he ever be able to be with other pigs? Well, last year we introduced him to Jeff and Linky. Jeff, who was sort of partially deaf, and Linky is scared to death of other pigs because when we rescued him, he'd never been socialised before. And we thought, well, you know, with Bill's vulnerability and Jeff's vulnerability, maybe he'll get on. And of course, they get on like a house on fire, so they all live together here. Again, that's really, really important to us at the sanctuary, to make sure that our animals have got all the right companions. So with your support and your help, this is where your money goes, to the rescue. We could have just taken Bill, but you know, the amount of money and the infrastructure that's had to be put in place for him, and the support and the right companions, that you help us do that, and that's where your money goes. So I hope you like Bill's story. He's probably 5 years old, and I'm just absolutely delighted. This is his 4th summer outside. So thank you very much everyone for supporting Bill. And what I'd like to do now is go and talk about one of the other residents you've helped us save and support at Dean Farm. So here we are, we've moved along from Bill, and I've brought you into a little paddock here with our most recently rescued sheep. Behind me is Uti, and on the other side I believe we've got Mini Milk. And again, many of our animals here are rescued because they're going off to slaughter, to be eaten. And we've now got 47 sheep. Little Uti here is 3 months old, and in 1 to 2 months, so at the age of 4 or 5 months, possibly 6 months, he would be going off to be slaughtered, to be eaten, along with millions of other animals in the UK. A big part of what we do here is, as I said, people come in, they identify with the animals. If you think right back to the beginning of this speech, and I talked about what I wanted to achieve back in 2004, I wanted people to come in and see the lovely little individuals, the individual beings, and identify with them, and realise that they're no different to us and no different to cats and dogs, and educate people to then going away thinking, I actually don't want to be responsible for killing this little lamb, and I certainly don't want to be eating its legs or its arms. And you, as our supporters, have helped us achieve this right the way back from when this was our first vision in 2004, all those years ago. And it's allowed us now to rescue, as I said, Uti and his friend Boris, and we've got Milky, Mini Milk, Dotty P and Chewy in this little paddock, which we've only rescued them about a week or 2 weeks ago, and all of them would either be dead or about to go off to slaughter, or even worse, off for live export and then be slaughtered. So I'd like to say thank you everyone who has listened and kept with me for my 20 minutes of speech for the virtual Animal Rights March. And really where we go from here is to do more of what we do, to invite more people into the sanctuary, to develop an education centre, a really, really good education centre back down in the barns. We would like to develop in our 10 acres of woodland a well-being woodland, so people, maybe vulnerable people, could come and and can spend time in that woodland and spend time with our animals, and really just do more of what we are doing to promote compassionate living and to promote veganism throughout the UK and throughout the globe. Thank you very, very much everyone for listening to me, and please do, at any opportunity, come and visit us and all of our beautiful, wonderful, gorgeous, amazing residents. Thank you very much.
That's better.
It's Mary again, and I couldn't go without Clover saying a final thing in my speech, and that is, don't forget to follow us on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, our website, and share us as much as you can. That would be fantastic, wouldn't it, Clover? Wouldn't it? Wouldn't it? It would. It would. It would. Come on then, boys, let's go on out into your field.